Maybe that left you feeling like, we're not getting anywhere. Great. You want to compare it to the ancient world. Because things weren't so different then. Maybe they weren't very different at all. For your secularists, maybe you had some classical Greek philosophers who would put a critical edge on their observations on life, and then you had folk believers. Maybe they were pagans, maybe they were whatever. You had cultural and state religions. You had, and you had a strain of something else. And the something else is what we're going to talk most about this semester. So to set the stage for that, let's open with Exodus 3. Now, Moses, tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. Jethro's a priest. Jethro's religious, like everybody in the ancient world is, practically. He drove the flock into the wilderness, and he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire out of a bush. He gazed, and there was a bush, all aflame, yet the bush was not consumed. If this doesn't strike you as odd, you're too familiar with this story. Moses said, I must turn aside to look at this marvelous sight. Why doesn't the bush burn up? When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. Here I am, he answered. And he said, don't come closer. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you stand is holy ground. I am, he said, the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. And the Lord continued, I have marked well the plight of my people in Egypt, and I have heeded their outcry because of their taskmasters. Yes, I am mindful of their sufferings. I've come down to rescue them from the Egyptians and to bring them out of that land to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the region of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Which would be a pretty scary description for Moses right now, although he already should have been terrified for about 3 other reasons. Now the cry of the Israelites has reached me. Moreover, I have seen how the Egyptians oppressed them. Come, therefore, I will send you to Pharaoh, and you shall free my people, the Israelites, from Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and free the Israelites from Egypt? And he said, I will be with you. That shall be your sign, that it was I who sent you. And when you have freed the people from Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain. Moses said to God, when I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, Ayeh Asher Ayeh, Hebrew for something like, I will be who I will be. He continued, thus you shall say to the Israelites, Ayeh sent me to you. And God said further to Moses, thus shall you speak to the Israelites, Yahweh, same form, something like, instead of I will be, he who is sometimes how people say it. I am he who am, one of my teachers tried to translate it. Thus shall you speak, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has sent me to you. This shall be my name forever. This is my appellation for all eternity. So go and assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, the Lord, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me and said, I've taken note of you and of what is being done to you in Egypt. And I have declared, I will take you out of the misery of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey. He's having Moses basically repeat what he himself had said. He's not giving him a different story, he's giving him the same words. A little condensed. They will listen to you. Then you shall go with the elders of Israel to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, manifested himself to us, showed himself to us. Now therefore let us go a distance of 3 days into the wilderness to sacrifice to the Lord our God. Yet, this is God speaking again now, I know that the king of Egypt will let you go only because of a greater might. So I will stretch out my hand and smite Egypt with various wonders, which I will work upon them. After that, he shall let you go. What does this have to do with everything that came before? Well, here's where we move on to another approach than just the demographic approach, than just, or rather you might even call it the democratic approach, counting up everybody who believes thus and so and saying this is the meaning. We'll get to the doctrine of revelation in a minute, but I want to start with the setting for the doctrine of revelation, which is the doctrine of hiddenness or non-revelation. Before God reveals himself, unless God reveals himself, God is hidden. God is unknown. This is something Americans aren't all that enthusiastic about. We like to think that God is just so disposed towards us, so like us, maybe even innately, intrinsically with and in us, that when we speak about God, we do so authentically and accurately, you know? We just like to think that we're right about what we say and what we feel. Even where God is concerned, maybe especially where God is concerned. Summarizing decades of a generation's experience of God, this is the Exodus generation. This is a generation of Hebrews that started in slavery and saw all the signs and wonders and mighty deeds that delivered them. And then the next generation, which saw a constant presence of God in the wilderness. Summing all of that contact up, Moses says, make no image of God because you saw no form of God. You've never seen God. You've seen fire, you've seen smoke, you've seen phenomena that suggest God, but you've never seen God himself. So make no image, Israel. Don't try to cast God as any created thing, because no created thing can represent what is uncreated, what is utterly different from what's created. Moving forward to the book of Job, another book that manifests God's profound difference. After all this suffering, after monologue from Job and from Job's friends, God finally gets to speak near the end of the book. And his first and lasting message there is, who do you think you are to know who I am? Where were you when I made the world? Where have you been? That you can make the kinds of claims that you make, your friends can make the kinds of claims that they make. Utter transcendence. Isaiah 55, looking forward to Israel's deliverance from exile, but also looking straight at the suffering and the cataclysm that's going to happen in anticipation of that. The death of Israel that's going to have to lead to its resurrection. The unpredictability of it all leads Isaiah to say, in God's name, my thoughts aren't your thoughts, my ways aren't your ways. You don't get me, Israel. Not just because you're wicked, although that doesn't help. You don't get me because you and I are different. Profoundly, fundamentally, essentially different. And for you to get me, God basically is saying through the prophets, I'm going to have to change you in unnatural ways, supernatural ways, to bring you into the kind of fellowship where you'll understand me And then you'll understand me like you've never understood me. Summarizing that is John chapter 1. John is reflecting on how Jesus' witnesses, Jesus' companions have come to know God. And he summarizes everything that came before with this line, no one has ever seen God. And you might be thinking, wait, didn't Moses see God? Well, Moses saw a little shade of God's backside in between the crack of two rocks. And even then, does that count? Not for John. Not in light of what Jesus has shown us. Didn't Isaiah see God? Not in spirit and truth. Not the way we've come to know God in Jesus. So, John 1:18, no one has ever seen God, but the only begotten God in the bosom of the Father has revealed him, has made him known. Martin Luther radicalizes this actually and says that the real backside of God that we see, the only real way that we see God is on the cross. In Jesus Christ, God is revealed under a contrary form. God is hidden even where he's revealed, and revealed where he's hidden. What does that mean? Well, that means if you want to look at the most profound place that we know who God is, it's the place that looks least like God is there, and that's the crucifixion. The very place where we see God clearly is the place where, without eyes of faith, we see nothing but absurdity. That's how different God is. God's difference, God's holiness is another word for this, is so vast that it drives us to humility and gratitude and carefulness.